Good afternoon, guys. We're gonna show you the difference between a salesman, which I'll be taking that role, and then you're gonna be the lead technician.
Okay.
So how this usually works is the salesman, we come in, we assess the situation, we do all of our inspections to kind of give you guys the proper tools that you need to successfully, put together your PIM.
And resolve their problems. So you guys usually do we get this information, and then our goal is to come in as a technician and to complete everything that's on here. And it looks like a bunch of chicken scratch just because I did it.
Right.
But nonetheless, there's a lot of information on here that needs to be done that's sort of our remedy or your remedy to that problem, because he might come in as a sales guy and I might come in differently with a different
And it happens all the
approach.
time. It does happen all the time. What happens is, as a salesman, when I see the general areas and stuff like that, and you as a technician, you're more, you dig in, you're more tangible, you're seeing and kind of investigating even further in depth than what we are.
So
but this is put together by the salesman.
That's correct.
So let's just take it from the top. So I approach a potential client. I introduce myself. I have my business card. I already know, because of Pest Pack, why I'm here. So the Pest Pack's already identified the situation for me. They have a potential problem with rodents. Today it's rodents. So the first thing that I always like to do is I always make contact with the client, and I ask them a couple questions. Where are you seeing activity? How do you know it's mice? What are some of the evidence that you might be running across? And then I take that information and I go basically off of what they're telling me and how I know to help them. So, for instance, today they've been seeing roughly about 5 to 6 rodents.
That's right.
I knew they had activity in the kitchen.
Sure.
I know they have activity in the basement. And I also, those two things tell me that exclusion, so I know there has to be an opening. So the first thing I do is I'll come into the structure. So some of the key tools that I use, my flashlight. Flashlights are your best friend. So now, Jeff, I know that they said it's in the kitchen. So my first thing I'm doing is water source.
Water source, yep.
So I know, with the plumbing, I know the plumbing leads from the basement.
Yep.
And so that's the number one key area that I always like to, where's the water?
Yeah.
I also would like to ask my potential clients, are you seeing any droppings on your countertops? Are you seeing them
in the drawers?
In the drawers, behind refrigerators, stuff like that. I'll always pull that stove, pot and pan drawer out. I always pull that out. I find a lot of activity, a lot of droppings I'll find in here, Jeff. And see, I already noticed that there's a couple of things that they'll munch on down there. There's some harborage and stuff like that. That gives me a clue. So I also know that majority of our rodents are coming in at ground level.
That's right.
So now that I've identified the kitchen and I see a couple activities going on, such as like what you like to call grease marks, the rub marks. If I see hairs, we like to find out where we're seeing the hairs from, and the droppings, where we're seeing the droppings. So the second thing I like to do is, after I know that they had an issue, I'll ask them, is this the only place that you're seeing activity? So, for instance, in the studio,
that's right,
back here, she said that she had a couple materials out of the wall that gave us, signs of nesting. So when we see the nesting, and that would be back here in that corner.
And that's in this corner here.
Sure. So, and I'm making mental notes and I'm writing this down because on the spec that I'm about to do for our technician, I'm trying to arm them with as much knowledge and basically give them every type of situation possible so they can double check and see if I've missed something or anything like that. So now that I've seen the 2 areas that I know that they have activity in, I go to the basement.
Gotcha.
So, and in the basement, there's a couple. I always go to the exterior walls first, Jeff. I'll work my way around exterior walls. I'm looking for the grease marks. I'm looking for droppings. I'm looking for nesting. I'm looking actually for the actual rodent itself, if I can see the rodent. And I usually start at the bottom of the stairs, and I'll just start looking at that. You called it the bottom plate.
The silt plate.
Yep, that's seal plate.
Yeah, which is that plate right there.
And then I go all the way around the exterior of the whole basement. Keeping in mind, I'm looking for any type of evidence.
Yeah, and when I do it too, I always tell people, be three-dimensional. Look
Right.
up, look down, look around. They're not always coming in where you think they're coming in.
Yeah, that's a good point, because sometimes, you'll find evidence where there's no opening.
That's right.
And you're like, how'd that happen?
Or why is it there?
Sure. So I always check that first. I also check drains. You've taught me to check my drains, see if there's standing water.
It's very important for rats, because they'll use those unused drains and they'll be popping in and out of those things pretty quickly.
A couple other things that I should have shown from the outside. We have the elevated porch.
Yes. Well, and then on the tech side, I'll show some of that too, because it's some of the things that you might not see that me as a tech I'll come into and say, hey, I'm going to check here just because I don't know.
Right.
So.
Right. I can't tell you how many times the tech will call the salesman, hey, I found another opening. Just wanted to let you know so we can mark the account. And
that's right.
Because we like to put as much as possible in every account that we have. The cool thing about our accounts at A1 Able is you can access it online at any point, set it up. You can
what's used.
Yeah, I love it.
What's been done. And it's real time too. So as soon as he clocks out,
that's right.
You can go in and see everything. So as a
tech, when you're done, it's there.
That's correct.
Perfect. So here's a couple other areas. This once again is there's your seal plate, there's your exterior walls. So I also know I like to check corners. I always check out my corners.
That and insulation. You get holes in insulation like over here where, I start to see that stuff, and it sort of sparks me to write it down and say, hey, there's probably something there. Good place for me as a technician to go ahead and set my stations and things like that.
So there's really not a lot of difference between, what the salesmen see initially and what the techs. The time it'll change is when a tech sees something that maybe a salesman might have missed.
Yeah, we always tell them, you can do what's on here, but you can't do less.
That's right.
You can always do more.
That's absolutely right.
So
you always taught me to look underneath stairwells. Like if you can turn around, I don't know if we have a shot of it. There's always some type of opening, especially on the exterior wall. You've shown me that.
They're just doors that don't get used, When people aren't using things, a lot of times it's because it doesn't close properly or whatever, so they just quit using it. And unfortunately, it starts to decay or it gets old, and they don't really know it's that old, So you have to come in and sort of address the situation sometimes with them.
So some of the other things that I always ask for is, hey, are there pets? Are there small children? How many people are living in the structure? I always like to ask that just because I know for you technicians, if you're putting in an RTU.
I definitely don't want to put it in the kids' bedroom.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Or outside with the dog can grab it.
In the dog pen, I don't want to do that.
Absolutely. So now that I've established this and, we found the opening in the corner, which we've already used stuff it in there. So we both felt that was a key spot. So I think as a tech, I tell you guys, hey, you might want to bring stuff it because you're going to find more of these holes than what I would.
That's right.
And I think it's really cool how we always safety first. We put all of our baits, anything that might be a little harmful to, a small child or an animal, we put it up high. And then I go to the attic. All right, so now I've made my way to the attic, Jeff. And as a salesman, I'm just kind of looking. Hey, I also look for any type of water damage. That'll show me that I have something going on from the outside in. And then I'm like, you've taught me, always look at your insulation, see if you see any nesting. I look in between our planks on the floor. I'm looking for rodent droppings. So Jeff, I look for daylight. And if you can see, underneath this window, if you take a peek, see the daylight coming in underneath the window? So I know, hey, I better put some baits there. I better double check.
Well, that, and you there's a lot of things you can go, and as a tech, I'll sort of walk through some of those things as well of what my suggestions would be.
Right.
If I walk in, the salesman doesn't catch it, some of the things that I can do and follow up with and say, hey, these are some of the things I think you need to address for maybe next time when you're out here, you can keep an eye on and let them know, hey, there's something going on, there isn't something going on, or hey, they got it fixed and we don't have to worry about that.
Absolutely. And as a salesman, depending on what time of the day, if I came in here later and I couldn't see the light, but you came in the morning, you saw it, that's something in which you would make an adjustment for. And like you said, we can always do more. We can
always address it.
Absolutely. You know? So we're also, not only are we looking for rodents, but we're also looking, we take peeks at, wood destroying, your carpenter, your termite. Of course, if we run across the roach, we're going to have a whole different plan for the roach.
That's right.
So it's always good, especially with the free estimate, to get us out here. Listen,
and the Benny is you don't have to do it all at once.
No,
you
right.
know? So
absolutely.
You can do, hey, I got rodents now, that's what I'm concerned about. We'll work on the cleanup on the other side of things.
And as a salesman, I always like to pitch our Ultra program because a lot of this is covered. From your rodent to your roaches to your ants.
All of that is covered in the Ultra program.
Right. The carpenter ant would be a little different situation if we were called out there because it is a wood destroying and it's a lot more labor intensive.
That's right.
But, I'm always constantly trying to give the best bang of the buck. I'm also trying to cover more than one thing, because let's face it, this is all a maintenance program. If you don't want pests, you have to be on a maintenance program.
That's right.
So I think it's really interesting how now you guys have, aside from the salesman and then from the tech, you're always going beyond the call. So, you're adding everything. You might see something and you'll document it. And it's great that we're doing this so people have an idea of what we're doing.
That's right. So on documentation I've got bait the attic space for rodents. And so the salesman came in here and when he came up here and I come up right after the salesman has left and he's left me a document, he really might not have said some of the things that I see. So one of the things I see when you start looking around, I can see runs of animals and rodents being the house mouse in these insulation. Like I said, we've done this before where it looks like rivers on a map. And you can see them sort of going through there. That's why it's all concave like that. So, when you look at it, you sort of got to stand back and say, man, do I really see that? I see it. So what we've done is we've put some bait placements in some of those runs. Now, the trick with bait is, as a technician, you've got to put it where kids and pets can't get to. They don't have kids and pets, so, we're good here. But what you want to do and what you have to do per the state is you have to pull that bait out of there or be able to.
Sure.
So, when I come up here and I see what I see, I sort of walk through here and say, hey, I got some bird nesting over here. To me, that's a sanitation issue. I may have to address that as a technician if the salesman missed it on the sales side and address that, hey, bird feces and things isn't what you want to be huffing. Just be aware you can clean it up as a homeowner, but we do that type of work as well. So please call us out and we can assess it and get you pricing as well. Or if you need the pricing, I can always call in and say, hey, there was some bird nesting up there. I think it's going to take X amount of time. Here's some of the products we use. Let's address that at a different date. Let's get the rodents taken care of now and go that route.
Let me ask you a quick question. Would you, at any point as a technician, would you recommend our insulation?
You do recommend the insulation just because you're uneven in some areas and then what you're going to take out when you do the cleanup, whether the homeowner does it or you do it, at some point that's going to have to be addressed. How are you going to get other insulation in there? Or if not, I can sell you the insulation to put it back in there to where it does have a borate in it. So it's not very palatable and it's not really used by insects.
So is it safe to say as a technician, would you start up here first and then work your way down and out the door?
I sort of like to start in the house and work my way out. That way I'm not tracking through the house after the fact. So I always introduce myself, start on the inside. Of course, we work out payment and all of that right out of the gate, and how all that's going to be done. That's done with the salesperson, and then we address whatever situation we're into. So that's the attic space, sort of cut and dry on how I would approach it. But you got 2 or 3, maybe 4 nests up here that I think are important to get out of here because birds are nasty animals, and rodents will use it. That's straw. Nothing better than having a little straw up there for your nesting site. You know what I mean? Rodents are pretty good. One thing you can do as well You know, we do have products where you can put them in between these slats.
Right.
So there's different bait placements that you can do. So you just got to be aware, you know, if you're having the problems down, and you can see some of the issues. I mean, there's a rodent hole right there, and you can see it blatantly right between the boards. So, you know, that's definitely a treatable area. So think about it while you're walking on it too. You can't just look down. You got to look up as well. So we've done our inspection in the attic space. We're making our way through the structure, and as a technician, you know, I'm following the guidelines that were provided by Kelly. But one of the things I want to do is I don't want to miss things neither. So you want to stop and take a look in your corners just to make sure your salesman didn't miss and that you're covering everything so the customer gets what they're after as far as results. You know, I'm looking on counters. I'm trying to check out everything as quick as possible and make my way through a room. Just to make sure I don't have feces or anything laying in places. You know, I open up closets all the time because not a lot of people will open up closets, but I want to check those corners, make sure I'm not getting things laying in some of the items that are stored, and then keep moving down the line. You got some heat ducts here. They love to run heat ducts when they get an opportunity, so you want to make sure that you don't have them laid up in here in these corners. So I want to check every room that way, and then I went into the bedroom. We do have some clutter in the bedroom. What that creates a lot of harborage. You know, I can do a lot of stuff in areas and in rooms, but when you get into an area like this, you're sort of reduced to what you can do in that room. So we want to make sure that we get some tin cats out here, maybe some multi-catches up underneath the dresser, somewhere in that area, and maybe in the closet area as well. So some of these heavy objects we can definitely monitor and take care of anything in there as well. One of the main things in the water source, you know, we talked about it in the kitchen areas. We definitely want to do it in the bathroom as well. So you always want to inspect up underneath your cupboards. It didn't say anything about the bathroom. They didn't say they were claiming to have problems, but I just want to take a quick peek to make sure we don't have anything up in those areas. And if I can make sure there's nothing there, I'm comfortable with that. And then we just keep moving down the line, and you do room per room. So we go in the next room and do the same exact thing, just to take a quick peek, making sure we're not seeing it on cabinets or counters. And this is on the tech side of things. Salesman's already sold it and said, hey, they're not having problems. I just want to make sure. Now we do the next room as well, and we have done that room, and we're going to make our way to the first floor. Making our way to one of the hot areas that were depicted on his graph, and one of the areas we have addressed already is the hole in the back corner. So we want to look at door seals. When I'm a technician, I'm looking to make sure this door seals really well, because if it doesn't, at least I can address it or let the salesman know so he can call in and address some of the other concerns we have. Door seals good. I get back into here. We do have some feces in the corner. We have patched a hole in this corner as well. And then you got to consider the cleanup aspect of it. Who's going to clean it up? Are they going to clean it up? We're going to clean it up. I have put a multi-catch device here. This is a tin cat. What's nice about that, it holds up to 32 mice in each tin cat. Yes, there is a glue board in there, so we can pick up those mice and clean this out so we can keep it running and keep it clean and neat so it'll catch as many animals as we can. We do have some other devices that you can use. If you're going to use traps inside of a structure, your maintenance has to be more frequent. My advice always is, I get into large jobs where we go ahead and we're inspecting, and we decide to put out 50 mouse traps. Well, try to set 50 regular mouse traps. These mouse traps are T-Rex traps. I want to say they're by, who they buy? They're by Snapper. What's nice about that product is it's a quick set trap, really nice to use in situations like this. With that, you want to get down and you want to inspect under some of this heavy stuff. You know, a lot of the inspectors probably won't do it, but I like to get in and look under some of the heavy objects and heavy items because, you know, they're going to go to where things don't move a lot. If they can nest back in a corner and they wait till it gets nice and quiet at night and you guys have gone to bed, they're going to be popping out and using these areas. So we want to make sure we don't have anything in those areas as well. And then I move to the kitchen area. Kitchen area is always hot. You know, one of the things they're always after, and this is on here as well, we do have some cleanup in the stove area. We've pulled the stove out. We've taken a look at what's underneath it. We do have some feces and nesting material in the side tracks. of the stove. Them need to be addressed and cleaned, whether it's us doing it or the homeowner. We just want to make sure the cleaning's done properly. But we want to make sure that all that gets cleaned up so we can start from a fresh slate and we know what's good and bad. You know what I mean? So it's really important for us to do that. So the stove to me is hot, and then of course everything as far as rodents is done to heat and water. So you always want to check your sink areas. Now what we've done here is it was designed to put a tin cat in there. So we did come in here. The specs said put a tin cat in there. We put a tin cat. It's a multi-catch trap. They like to use these false bottoms of these cabinets. And if they've got access, they will run these cabinets all day long without you having access to them. So it's very important to get something in here to utilize and stop the movement of what's happening underneath here that you don't see. Because if I had to guess, they're using it pretty regularly, especially what you see under the stove. My other one is heat source. Anytime you get in the kitchen, heat source is the main draw for rodents, especially mice. It's not as much water for mice as it is rats. So we put a RTU, which is a ready-to-use bait device, back here. Now as he's using that refrigerator and going back there, he picks up some of that bait and we stop him very quickly. So that becomes the goal, is trying to stop what's in here, and then of course stopping any pressure from the exterior. So that's the kitchen in a nutshell. And of course you want, holy smoke, it was a booby trap. I was booby trapped. It's like a mouse in here. So anyways, you want to look inside, you know, some of your dishes as well, because you know what you'll start to see, and I don't see it here because I just cleaned out the whole cupboard, is make sure you don't have feces laid up in there, because they do carry disease, and you don't want that. Salmonella is one of the big ones. So you know, you want to, if they are in a cabinet, you want to make sure that customer knows they're in that cabinet. Be washing and cleaning those items, because you don't want to eat after rodents have been into a spot. So same with the other cabinet, everything looks good in here as well. I'm not getting the feces in there, so at that point, you know, I move on. Didn't say anything to be done in there, so I didn't do anything in there, but I wanted to look at it myself. So we moved to the basement. Basement was another hot item that was on my graph. We wanted to move to the basement area. I always check out my door just like we did up there. We're looking at thresholds, making sure the threshold's good, door sealed. I don't think they're using that door per se, at least not from the inside. So same thing applies on the lower side of the structure. You start walking through it and you start outlining areas of concern. He depicted on his graph that, hey, the line coming in from the air conditioner is hot, meaning that there were rodents using this. So with that, the Stuff It materials, a product that we put in that, we've put that there because we know rodents were using it. We've stuffed that full to where it's really tight in there. You can't get that out, and it's in there tight. We were getting air come through there to where we were actually getting movement of the cobwebs. There was so much air. So we've tucked that on the front side and we've done it. Now I'm getting the black marks right here. That's the sebum that comes off of that animal as he runs and uses the path all the time. So those rodents are using this path pretty regularly. That to me needs cleaned up, and I'll address that with the homeowner. And then of course I'll do the same and outline the structure all the way on the inside of the place. Some of the things that I see, and the salesman did mention, is make sure to put bait stations up along this sill plate. And you can see rodents digging into the sill plate. They're digging into the insulation. I do believe we had a couple, where was it? I had them and I saw them earlier. I know we had a couple openings to where we may have already moved the insulation to where it's very difficult to see it, but they were using this insulation and we know that, so we went ahead and we started putting bait devices, the little RTUs, ready to use bait. We put those up into areas where they're flat and we know that those animals are using, so we got them tucked up here on the sill plate. We want to make sure that we don't have kids and animals down here, so we don't want to be putting baits on the ground if we can avoid it. Maybe outside a little bit, but not inside like this. So, and we do that through the whole structure. A lot of times you're looking at plumbing lines and plumbing runs. You know, to me, that's a pretty significant plumbing run. It goes from floor to floor. So you want to make sure you address that, because if you can limit their access in and out of a structure, becomes the goal. And that's where IPM, or integrative pest management, comes in. Utilizing everything you have out there before you start using pesticides. You know, make sure your exclusion's done, make sure your assessment's done properly. So that's what we're trying to do, and we're trying to do this and get the service all done at once. So, and we move through the whole basement that way. We don't have much down here, but we do have stations periodically throughout this basement, maybe 6 or 7 on this sill plate and on these sill plate edges. And we've patched a couple holes here. So that gets us sort of out of the basement area and into the yard, and we'll go to that. So upon the arrival, I've got the specs. I've already done my all my preparation has been done prior to me getting out here. So I've got a lot of supplies in the car that I'll bring in as need be. First thing I want to do is touch base with the homeowner, let them know that I'm here and what they're going to expect as far as what I'm going to do that day. So I know the outside's an important part. It's already been assessed, so they've got me putting out a couple bait stations. I'm going to take them bait stations and stick them out. We've already placed them. We've got some seal work along the way for those stations as well. And when I say seal work, there's exclusionary measures that we addressed right out of the gate. Kelly addressed them on his specifications. One of them was the line we had looked at inside. But this line has an opening about the size of a dime right next to the pipe. We went ahead and sealed that with the stuff-it material. Now that's inaccessible. We know that was being used. One other thing we do is we put exterior bait devices around the structure, because stopping what's pressuring the structure is just as important as stopping what's in the structure. So once we've got everything in place out here, then we move to the inside and we set up everything that way. But what's set outside is a tamper-resistant station. There's a couple different variations of them, or if you get into specific situations, you can change those stations to multi-catch devices to where you're not in harm's way of dogs and pets. Some of the things we looked at and we found on this structure, we found gapping up underneath this door edge. And we wanted to take that gap away. There's still a pretty significant gap in there. I want to make sure all that gets sealed. So we're going to go ahead and put a stuff-it product in that, and we're going to seal up that edge. That eliminates rodents from getting in there. And then it's very important to get a station close to your entrance points, or what you consider entrance points, and he's already done that. He's got the station placed here. It's a tamper-resistant station. We've got our exclusionary work being done at that point. A couple ways you can exclude. We use a stuff-it material, or we can use some different wire meshes, which I've got laid out here. But that is basically exclusion, and then getting the stations out. So this is our rodent setup here today. We set up rodent control very similar on most cases, unless infestations are very large, but this should be a very cut and dry rodent job that we do all the time. It does require inside and outside devices and some exclusionary work. Take a look at the video. I think you're going to like this. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to contact us, but this is pretty standard for what you're going to see out there in the field. I think you techs are going to enjoy this.